Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday, October 3rd. This is Spartan News. I am the Spartan. This will be a very short update. I wanted to say hi. I missed you guys. I'm going to cover off the Russian losses over the last 24 hours. And I had my first little dispute with the Ministry of Defense, apparently. Not a big deal. And then I want to dispel some online rumors that some people have contacted me about, and then a couple of little tidbits to start off your day. Nothing too crazy. No map updates. Nothing like that. So to get started, the Russian losses over the last 24 hours. 360 men. So it's really weird, right? So we were in the 300s for 3 days in a row, I think, something like that, maybe four. And then it ticked up, and then it's gone back down. And I think that really speaks to the entrenched positions of the Russians and the sort of slowing forward progress in some areas. A lot of things the Ukrainians are doing don't have visual representation afterwards. So when they're dropping cluster munitions on a trench network or HIMARS, especially one of those tungsten steel HIMARS anti-personnel Gimlers it may land without visual confirmation, or it may do some damage and you can't really back it up, etc. But it's in a, I don't want to say it's a lull, and it's insulting to the front line anywhere to say that they're going too slow, or like the losses aren't as high as they should be. I'm just looking at it from a kind of a clinical standpoint to basically say, so what's going on that tells why are the KIAs and WIAs potentially going down, and at the same time other sort of equipment losses are staying the same or going up, and you try to, especially where there's OPSEC, operational security, and you're not getting a detailed response on what's going on. So a bit of a rabbit hole there. I just think that there is not as much frontline movement, and I also think that the Russians have really dug themselves in well in certain areas, and they are tactically slowly retreating in others while keeping their heads down. So you're not seeing those meat waves of Bakhmut where 1,000 Russians would be removed in a day because of the fact that the Wagnerites just basically took a bunch of prisoners and sent them over the hill and said, show us where the machine guns are. So anyways, it's just something to keep an eye on. We did tick up to over 500. I think we went 400, then 500. Now we're back down to 360. So we'll see if that trend continues. More importantly, is the Ukrainians, by all accounts, are not losing that many people, which is great, fantastic. I mean, any loss of life for the Ukrainians is too much, but they do appear to be taking the smart route to victory, as well as it's sort of a death by 1,000 cuts for what they're delivering to the Russians, which is, we're not going to rush headlong into withering counterfire or kill box or anything like that. We're going to basically systematically take you apart, one section, one farm field, one windbreak at a time, one trench network at a time. And we will slowly advance, knowing we are removing men and machines from the battlefield as we go. So 15 tanks, to my point, 15 tanks is one of the highest we've had in quite a while. You got to think each one of those tanks is crewed by 3 people. It's 45 people potentially in those tanks. I've seen a couple videos of tanks that are kind of in revetments being used more like stationary artillery than tanks. But anyways, 15 tanks off the battlefield is fantastic. Those are $3 million a pop. That's $4.5 million. Not that the dollar value matters to the Russians; they don't care. But they're not easily replaced. ADPVs, armored personnel vehicles, infantry fighting vehicles, they all kind of fall into that. Armored personnel carriers, they all fall into that bucket. That's low. 40 artillery is insane. 40, come on now. And I don't. I believe the Ukrainians when they say they got 40. They pretty much got 40. You see the videos. They're just everywhere, of anywhere from mortars to heavier to long distance peons, getting wiped out. 20 UAVs. I believe that's a sort of a delayed reporting as usual on the UAVs from a drone attack from about 36 hours ago, and 23 vehicles and fuel tanks. That puts the Russian losses dollar-wise at 89.277044 or $89.3 billion US dollars estimated losses for the Russians. That's a lot. That is 11 trillion rubles. So hard to sustain. And the Russians will not be able to reconstitute their military for decades to this point, if ever. A lot of people don't realize that the vast majority of what the Russians have been throwing into the battlefield, from artillery to armored personnel carriers to tanks to anything, most of that has not been manufactured in the last 10 years, 12 years, 15 years. The Russians, after World War II, basically said the Soviets at that time, we will never again be short on ammunition or equipment. And so they started massively stockpiling everything under the sun. And this is what's being spent. They don't have the economy. They don't have 300 million people anymore. They have 140 million. They don't have the USSR anymore. They have what's left of the Russian Federation, and it's crumbling. They are not going. Ukraine was their main manufacturing base. Obviously, that's not going to happen. They are not going to be able to reconstitute the military to what it was before. Ukraine is removing the Russian bear threat from the geopolitical battlefield for decades to come, probably, in my opinion. But many people back that up. So to address the thumbnail, so I had numerous people contact me and ask me, are you British troops in Ukraine now? Are they being sent? And they use the term hot war. So somebody's been putting out a term saying a hot war is possible or imminent or something like that. So carte blanche across the board, the answer is no, no, and no. There are no British troops in Ukraine. There are no British troops planned to go to Ukraine. There is no hot war with NATO imminent, or the West, or whoever you want to call it. The most that's been floated as a trial balloon are British military trainers. These would not be armed troops, and they would not be put in harm's way unnecessarily. But there was speculation that British trainers, military trainers, would go to Ukraine and train them in country as opposed to bringing the Ukrainians out of Ukraine. So let me read this from October 1st, 2 days ago. There are no immediate plans to deploy military instructors to Ukraine. Let me just stop there. Sorry. There's a difference between troops and instructors. Yes, they're both part of the military. When you use terminology like deployed forces, deployed troops, armed troops, that sort of thing, the expectation is that they have their ROE, the rules of engagement, include either actively attacking an enemy force, actively defending if you're threatened, firing if fired upon, all that sort of stuff. There's different ROEs that are built, right, or that are mandated for any deployment to foreign soil. If there were trainers being sent to Ukraine, while the war was still going on, I can 100% tell you that the ROE would be at all costs get out of Dodge. Only as a last resort would you defend yourself. Would you, like if Russian VDV landed paratrooped in or something like that, then yes, of course, they're going to be able to defend themselves. But if there was a threat of, incoming artillery, airstrikes, Russian troop breakthrough and defensive lines, the Ukrainian defensive lines, that was going to put the training base at risk or whatever, they would remove those British instructors faster than you would believe. So, anyways, I'll continue reading this. There are no immediate plans to deploy military instructors to Ukraine. British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said on Sunday, rowing back from comments by his defense minister who had suggested troops could carry out training in the country. To date, Britain and its allies have avoided a formal military presence in Ukraine to reduce the risk of a direct conflict with Russia. British Defense Minister Grant Shapps, who was appointed to the role last month, said in an interview with the Sunday Telegraph newspaper that he wanted to deploy military instructors in addition to training Ukrainian armed forces in Britain as well as Western countries. Hours after the interview was published, Sunak said that there were no immediate plans to send British troops to Ukraine. Just a couple hours after that, Sunak clarified. What the defense secretary was saying was that it might be possible one day in the future for us to do some training in Ukraine, Sunak told reporters at the start of the governing Conservative Party's annual conference in Manchester. But that's something for the long term, not the here and now. There are no British soldiers that will be sent to fight in the current conflict. So, again, I received a couple comments from people asking me how they had read online that British troops had already arrived in Ukraine, that a hot war was imminent or possible, or there was a potential of it. Even if you take the defense minister's statements, just skim it. No way, shape, or form did he say troops had arrived. No way did he say that combat troops were even being planned. The term troops and trainers may have been used loosely and interspersed, but at the same time, they have not arrived. They are not being planned. They are hopefully going to go in the future, was basically his, musing. So, if you see any, whether it's thumbnails or stories online about different things, such as, Serbia about to attack Kosovo, British troops have arrived in Ukraine and are ready to start kicking ass and taking names. Vladimir Zelensky's wife has a Russian passport, etc., etc. Do your own DD, which is due diligence. Do your own research. Do some digging. Find out for yourself. If someone tells you X, make sure it's X. Sometimes it's Y. If someone tells you something is, flat, maybe it's round, vice versa, whatever. So it wasn't really too hard to go on to various British news sources and find Rishi Sunak cleaning up that comment. Short, it didn't really have to be cleaned up, but the press grabbed on the term troops and Ukraine and ran with it to the point where some people were saying that they were already in country. So, anyways, not too many people were saying they were in country, by the way. Oh, come on. So there's what's being called an exodus of sort of center left leaning people that are supporting Ukraine. There's an exodus of people from X, formerly known as Twitter. This post puts it in perspective. I'd like to put my 2 cents in about the mass Twitter exodus of people who support Ukraine. There's no such thing as a vacuum when it comes to social media platforms. When good people leave, pro-Kremlin bots will make sure to fill the spots. Also, unfortunately, a lot of politicians and global media rely on this platform to measure the public's support for various causes. It's no different when it comes to support for Ukraine. I beg you to think really hard before you leave. I'll stop there. I agree 100%. Do not leave X because of the fact that Elon Musk and bots, etc., are trolling the U.S., Ukraine, etc. Stay, make your voice heard. You don't have to pay for verification, but you can make your voice heard at your leaders, at your politicians, at the good people, or at the people that you're trying to refute. Do not leave. That's a rule. That's mandated. You cannot leave. Okay. Just before I go on, please make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Especially subscribe. Subscriptions help with so many algorithms, etc. This is from the file of really. Thanks. But it's the UK Defense Ministry basically said the Russian Black Fleet has suffered a functional defeat in the Black Sea. Earlier, British intelligence stated that after a series of successful Ukrainian strikes, the Russian Black Sea Fleet will not be able to have such control in the Black Sea waters as before, and its ships will not be safe even in ports. That's kind of like, it's like, really? I know. Look at there's the port, there's ships. So that's the Moskva, and that is the Rostov-on-Don sub, and that is the Black Sea headquarters in Sevastopol. This was the submarine that was destroyed in the dry dock, and right next to it was the Minsk Rapucha landing class vessel. They were both torched in their dry docks. So basically, with the Ministry of Defense here, it's kind of like a recap after the fact. Yeah, we know the Russian Black Sea Fleet is not safe in Sevastopol, and in fact, they're not really safe in Novorossiysk, which is close to Sochi. They are basically, a lot of them are being kept at sea and spread out, so they're not easy targets for drones. There are multiple layers of sea barriers out there to try to stop the USVs. In the Black Sea Fleet is really almost a non-event at the moment, to the point where more and more ships are picking up grain and hugging the coast, and basically flaunting the Russians' demand that the shipping stop. And there is no blockade. I mean, calling it a blockade is giving the Russians way too much credit. There are no Russian ships on the east coast of Ukraine or Romania, Bulgaria, that sort of thing, basically stopping and frisking ships anymore. It's not happening. The Russian ships can't travel that far because of the fact that once they're out that far, they're at risk of being struck by cruise missiles, USVs, submarines, torpedoes, etc. So it's a blockade in name only. There's no blockade. So good on the Ukrainians. The first time in world history that a non-naval nation has destroyed or handcuffed a country with one of the largest navies in the world. It's never been done before. When you hear about all the Russian military equipment being produced and sent to the front lines, and that they still have millions of rounds, these Russian troops on the front line had these mortars show up. Like, look at them. Their layers of steel have come off of them. They're rusting. These are unusable. They're actually trying to save this one to see if they can still use it. They've cleaned the rust off of that one. I will tell you right now, you drop a rusty mortar down the mortar tube. When it hits, it's supposed to, fly back out the bad end. I wouldn't be standing anywhere near, and I wouldn't be the guy dropping these into the mortar, because there's a good chance that those things are going to stay in there and blow up. And this is not the first time we've seen. Look at that. They've been rusting in there for years. This is not the first time we've seen this type of ammunition, or ammunition in this type of condition, showing up to the front line. That is so rusted. Not as so rusted. If you were to try to use that, that might snap off as it tried to exit the mortar tube. Hey, Solyov. How's it going, buddy? And there's more and more boxes just like that. And they're trying to clean up the ones that are savable. Second greatest military in the world. It gets better. Just wait till the next. Okay. That's enough of Pavlov. Second last thing, and this I can't even. Russia accidentally reveals addresses of Putin's secret service. Worse than that. Russian authorities accidentally revealed the addresses of the country's secret military buildings, institutions, and spy homes in Moscow and St. Petersburg, an investigation site found. The Dossier Center, a project launched by Russian opposition figure Mikhail Khodorkovsky, found the addresses listed in a 434-page document titled Special Group, which was published on the Moscow City Hall website. The document... One second. Sorry about that. The document listed properties where there must be no blackouts. So basically, something at these various sites are so important to the government, to the military, to the special services, that they cannot suffer a power outage. So do whatever you need to do to make sure power is maintained in these different at these different addresses. It takes, if you're going to spy school, basically like first year spy school people would be able to figure out why that is. The list reportedly included a range of top secret government facilities, homes belonging to GRU, the main directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, officers and President Vladimir Putin's Secret Service, an ammunition depot, and more. The document was signed by Vyacheslav Torsunov, the head of the Housing and Communal, I should say ex-head probably, Housing and Communal Services Department, and Andrei Kovalev, the director of Mosener Gozbit, which sells electric energy to subscribers in the Moscow region. It was approved by the mayor of Moscow, Sergei Sobyanin. Wow. Gerasimov. Maybe Gerasimov had something to do with it too. And Shoigu. The list also includes details of 2 apartments associated with Russia's foreign intelligence services, where which are either inhabited by department employees or used for conducting special operations. Could be black sites. Could be... Oh my goodness. Anyways, so the Russians put this out online. The largest concentration of such facilities and buildings are in Serebryanny Bor, a large park area in northwest Moscow. I can't even. This would be like MI6, MI5, CIA, FBI, CSIS, and the RCMP, etc., basically saying to the power authorities, the power companies, whatever, in what is it, Foxhall in Britain, Ottawa in Canada, Langley in the U.S., not Langley, I don't know. Baltimore, Maryland, whatever. Here's a list of 25, 30 houses in different areas that you have as residential, but we need to make sure that under no circumstances ever do they lose power. And it's so important. We're going to put it in a dossier and we're going to publish that online for everybody to see. So make sure the power stays up in those different areas, in those different houses, no matter what, okay? Winky, winky, nudgy, nudgy. This is the greatest, second greatest military and supposedly greatest intelligence service in the world. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable. You heard it here. And last, this is what we fight for. Sorry, I'm going to let it play again. I screwed that one up. Just look at this. He's going off to war again, saying goodbye to his little girl before he leaves. There's nothing better than just pure love. That's it. Have a great day. Question sources, okay? But have a great day. Slava Ukraini.